Democrats win on healthcare, environment, women's rights, respect for but on those issues, I bet you that are the big ones that they vote on more: crime, immigration, wars, economy, corruption. So that's the takeaway there.
The only thing the Democratic Party stands for today is opposition to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I just read Kamala Harris's new book, 107
No,
Days.
you didn't.
I did?
When they ask who has a better plan, Republicans crushing it on crime, immigration, wars, the economy, even corruption. Democrats win by 2 points on respect for democracy. Now, some of this is just because people are stupid.
According to recent reports, Kamala Harris has released a new book exploring why her campaign fell apart. But here's the catch. In true Harris fashion, she's never the one to blame. Page after page is filled with half-truths, self-pity, and the same polished buzzwords that have become the trademark of today's political left. Enter Bill Maher, the unapologetic anti-woke firebrand armed with his trademark sarcasm. With surgical precision, he sliced through Harris's carefully built facade, exposing her not as a bold reformer, but as an awkward, self-absorbed politician pretending to be profound. Brace yourself. This time it's going to sting.
Perpetuating victimhood, especially when it's false, is not a great advertisement for leadership. Kamala Harris's new memoir of the 24 election is called 107 Days, but it should have been called Everyone Sucks But Me. 107 Days is a victim's title because, get it, she only had 107 days to win. Yeah, and $1.5 billion and a built-in army of about 75 million people who'd vote for any human-adjacent life form that wasn't.
Because let's face it, building a leadership brand on false victimhood isn't exactly the formula for greatness. Harris's new memoir on the 2024 election might as well have been titled Everyone's the Problem But Me instead of 107 Days. Bill Maher kicked things off by playing a clip from Kamala Harris's 107 Days.
107 days, nothing is ever Kamala's fault. Biden lets her down by not stepping down sooner. Pouty face emoji. Gavin Newsom, he was asked for his endorsement, but texted, hiking, we'll call back. But then never did. And then he didn't even ask her to prom. America itself lets Kamala down by not being ready for the running mate she really wanted, Pete Buttigieg. So she's stuck with the Home Depot paint salesman. And the rest is herstory. Poor Kamala. We made her the star of a rom-com and didn't even give her a gay best friend.
And according to him, the title alone tells you everything you need to know. A story crafted to paint Harris as the helpless victim who simply ran out of time. But Maher wasn't buying it. He reminded viewers that Harris had one of the most heavily funded campaigns in modern political history, along with near universal support from the mainstream media, a press corps that treated her like political royalty. Roughly 75 million voters were already leaning her way. She had every structural advantage imaginable. So, to mourn her campaign as if she'd been unfairly denied success wasn't just misleading, it was absurd. Maher said out loud what many were thinking. Kamala Harris failed, not because the odds were stacked against her, but because she couldn't deliver even with every advantage.
She writes that on election night, when it was clear she'd lost, an aide peeled the words, Madam President, off the cupcakes before handing them out. Oh, geez, that's like a scene from Bridget Jones Runs for President, for Christ's sake.
And then came the real bombshells. In her book, Harris turns her story into something closer to a political soap opera than a serious memoir. She takes aim at her former boss, Joe Biden, accusing him of staying in the race too long and effectively costing her the chance to save the campaign. She even hints that Biden ignored early warnings about his declining mental sharpness. So much for loyalty. But Harris doesn't stop there. She goes further, criticizing the country itself, arguing that America simply isn't ready for a female president because accountability, in her view, isn't valued anymore. And as if that wasn't enough deflection, she blames her downfall on not landing her ideal running mate, Pete Buttigieg. Classic Kamala. When in doubt, blame everyone but yourself.
Ladies, I know this isn't fair, but we're all always running against the worst cliche of who people think we are. Women Democrats can't look oversensitive or preachy or unable to laugh at themselves. They also can't look silly, like Gretchen Whitmer did, trying to hide in the Oval Office. They have to look brave and strong.
Now, this part is almost too funny to believe. Apparently, the downfall of Kamala's campaign wasn't Trump, wasn't the voters, wasn't the polls, it was cupcakes. Yes, according to her own book, one of her campaign aides made the fatal mistake of removing the Madam President labels from the cupcakes before they were handed out to supporters. That's right. Her presidential hopes, she claims, were iced into oblivion. Maher couldn't stop laughing. He said what we were all thinking: you can't lose an election because of frosting. But in Kamala's world, that's the headline. While the rest of us saw a campaign go up in flames, she apparently saw a bakery conspiracy. You can't make this stuff up, but she definitely did.
It wasn't a good look for the woman party that all the guys were speaking out for Jimmy Kimmel when Trump went after him, except on the woman show, where for 5 days the outspoken hosts were suddenly as quiet as a geisha.
And that's where Maher's scalpel cuts deeper, not just at Kamala, but at the whole DNC image machine. These women have spent years crafting an armor of toughness, stoic, unflinching, emotionless leaders who never cry, never crack, never let a single bead of sweat show. It's political cosplay. The Iron Lady act rebooted for cable news, but everyone can see the act wearing thin. Behind the rehearsed sound bites and strained smiles is a quiet panic, the fear that showing even a trace of real emotion will be labeled weakness. The tragic irony, that obsession with seeming strong has made them look hollow. They've worked so hard to appear invincible that they've forgotten the one quality voters actually respond to: authenticity.
The fifth day, they rose and said, "No one silences us. No one had to. You silenced yourself." Whoopi Goldberg continued, "Did you all really think we weren't going to talk about Jimmy Kimmel? No, I thought you would, but then you didn't." "5 days? Talk about needing extra time to get ready. And if you can't take a break, laugh and laugh at that, you're making..."
If you've ever wondered why Bill Maher went after the women on The View, here's the story behind the smoke. It all started when Maher asked a simple question. Why had they suddenly stopped talking about the Jimmy Kimmel fiasco? Instead of answering, they laughed it off, sneered, and brushed him aside like he was stirring trouble for ratings. But this is Bill Maher, and he doesn't do silence. He cut through the fake giggles and proved what many had already suspected. Their so-called courage was just a stage act.
Polling came out, and this is really, I'm speaking to the Democrats especially here, because Trump's numbers are down. They're down with Latinos, they're down with blacks, they're down 15 points with whites. And when whites say, "You're not hip anymore," ooh. And yet, in the other poll, on issues, Trump still winning. So this is your big opportunity, Democrats. He's down in the numbers, and you still can't score.
Behind the scenes, insiders say The View nearly got pulled off the air when Kimmel's ban first broke. The once loud, unapologetic panel suddenly mute. For weeks, the same women who preach about speaking truth to power were whispering off camera, terrified of losing their jobs. Then, as word spread that Kimmel was being reinstated, something miraculous happened. Their confidence came roaring back. Overnight, the warriors of female empowerment rediscovered their voices, and Maher nailed it. He exposed the performance for what it was: conditional bravery, the kind that only exists when it's safe, when the paycheck's secure, and when the audience is guaranteed applause. Because, as Maher said without saying it, real courage isn't measured by what you say when it's easy, but by what you risk when it's not.
When they ask who has a better plan, Republicans crushing it on crime, immigration, wars, the economy, even corruption. Democrats win by 2 points on respect for democracy. Now, some of this is just because people are stupid.
Whoopi Goldberg and Ana Navarro are the perfect case studies in selective courage. Loud when it helps, silent when it hurts. Their entire careers have been powered by outrage that conveniently switches on and off depending on who's in the crosshairs. They've built their reputations on calling others out, canceling anyone who dares to challenge their narrative. But the moment that same fire starts to drift in their direction, everything changes. Suddenly, the boldness fades, the tone softens, and fear takes over. They know exactly how ruthless a cancellation can be, and after all, they helped design the playbook. It's almost poetic, really. The self-proclaimed warriors of justice trembling at the thought of losing the very platforms that gave them power. They'll twist themselves in knots to dodge accountability, even as they continue unleashing that same digital mob on others. And that's the true irony.
Democrats win on healthcare, environment, women's rights, respect for, but on those issues, I bet you that are the big ones that they vote on more: crime, immigration, wars, economy, corruption. So that's the takeaway there.
The only thing the Democratic Party stands for today is opposition to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I just read Kamala Harris's new book, 107
No,
Days.
you didn't.
I did?
The arbiters of morality have become masters of hypocrisy. What they practice isn't bravery, it's performance art. Highbrow hypocrisy broadcast daily on national television, dressed up as virtue. It's becoming harder to ignore why the DNC keeps stumbling. There's no commanding voice, no true leader capable of uniting the party or earning genuine trust. What remains is a collection of disconnected factions, each pulling in its own direction. The far left fringe still holds overwhelming sway, turning what was once a movement into a rigid echo chamber. In this climate, disagreement isn't treated as dialogue, and it's treated as betrayal. Groupthink thrives while strategy withers. Rather than facing uncomfortable truths, many cling to the illusion that slogans can substitute for structure. Kamala Harris's decision to turn on her own party only deepened the chaos. Instead of owning up to one of the most embarrassing election losses in modern Democratic history, she's busy pointing fingers and rewriting events to fit her narrative. The result? A party paralyzed by denial, weighed down by self-inflicted wounds, and trapped under the banner of leadership that exists in name only.
As you probably know, it's like a diary of what happened, but I was looking for, okay, and what's the plan for the future? There wasn't any, and she's just indicative of the party at large. And by the way, that's one of the reasons she lost.
She's rewriting history in the book, too. She's now against men and women's sports. Like, come on. Like, they tried to dismantle Title IX against women when she was vice president.
Right. I mean, that's just one of many examples.
She could have had 701 days and would have still lost that race.
But you're right, the data says it's cost of living, it's inflation, it's immigration, illegal immigration, all those things. Everything else is at the bottom.
And by the way,
law and order crime.
107 days, way too many for anybody, but including her.
Right.
But the more they got to know her, the less they liked her. I've said this many times on this show. Other countries don't do this. They don't have years to.
Donald's decline may only extend to his popularity, and honestly, that's not surprising. After a political comeback of that magnitude, maintaining such unstoppable momentum is nearly impossible. But here's the twist. Even as his favorability wavers, he still dominates the issues that keep most Americans awake at night. When it comes to the economy, working-class voters remember what it felt like under his watch: stronger paychecks, lower inflation, and a sense that someone was actually on their side. On the border, he remains one of the few figures openly committed to restoring order. His unapologetic America First stance continues to resonate, especially in foreign affairs. So, while Trump might not be the most universally liked personality, he continues to outperform others on substance. Popularity fades, relevance doesn't. Exactly. And that, in truth, has become the Democrats' entire political identity: fighting Donald Trump. That's their full playbook. Oppose him, mock him, resist him, repeat. What started as a campaign tactic has turned into a full-time obsession. Sure, it worked the first time when Biden rode the anti-Trump wave into office, but when the same formula was recycled under Kamala Harris, voters saw straight through it. The fatigue had set in. People were no longer energized by Trump bashing. They were exhausted by it. They wanted substance, a vision, a plan, a path forward. Yet, what they found in the DNC was emptiness. No coherent economic plan, no serious border policy, no leadership strong enough to unite a fractured base, just more outrage, more slogans, more moral grandstanding. The Democrats' hatred of Trump had become their personality. And now that the fury has faded, what remains is a hollow party, leaderless, uninspired, and completely detached from the real concerns of everyday Americans. Maher was absolutely right. The higher Kamala Harris climbed, the more her public image crumbled. And honestly, the blame wasn't hard to trace. Those perfectly curated photo ops, the stage charisma, and the parade of Hollywood endorsements, they all screamed artificial. What was meant to look presidential ended up feeling painfully rehearsed. Her nervous laugh became infamous, her long-winded answers turned into memes, and her inability to give a clear response exposed something deeper. She simply wasn't ready for the weight of leadership or the complexity of policy. Each appearance chipped away at the illusion her team tried so hard to maintain. What voters wanted was honesty, strength, and direction. What they got instead was a political performance, a campaign built on optics, not conviction. Kamala Harris became less of a leader.
Call an election, and they have an election in a month.
Yeah, and nor the influence of money. We should do that.
That's going to be hard to get rid of. They tried. But, it's like you don't need 100 days. You need 107 days. You tell people your plan. This is what I am for. This is my thing. You're selling something. You're selling a vacuum cleaner. If I'm selling a vacuum cleaner, I'll tell you why I think it's best. When I tell you every goddamn day for 2 years? Did I tell you about the attachment that gets under the... Yeah, you did. You told me 1,000.
And more of a walking publicity project, polished on the outside but hollow at the core. In the end, Maher's takedown of Kamala Harris and the Democratic establishment was both brutally honest and painfully accurate. He stripped away the slogans and sound bites to expose the deeper problem, a party without direction, without authenticity, and without a true connection to everyday Americans. The Democratic National Committee stands hollow, no clear leader, no unifying message, and no pulse on what voters actually care about. Kamala's endless blame shifting, the party's obsession with Trump, and their hollow displays of courage all reveal the same truth. This isn't a movement anymore, it's a performance. Maher didn't create that criticism, that he merely said aloud what millions were already thinking. The Democrats aren't losing because of Donald Trump. They're losing because of themselves. Until they abandon performative wokeness and start embracing accountability, they'll keep writing memoirs about failure instead of crafting a blueprint for victory. That brings us to the end of today's video. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.